What's up guys, it's Nick2, and today I'm going to be showing you guys the unbelievably overpowered leveling necromancer minion build. This build is by far and away the best leveling build in the game, and you're going to be able to just absolutely dominate all the way up to level 100 with this build. Right out the gate, it is incredibly strong. Necromancer was already the best leveling class with Blood Surge, and now you just add on the fact that minions are like 10 times more powerful, and you can add them to the build completely for free. You're just going to dominate everything. It is unbelievably strong, and going into the end game, Necromancer with minions is one of the best builds in the game, being able to not only absolutely annihilate bosses, but just clear maps extremely quickly. So I'm going to go over what is the best way to set up the leveling build, and I'll give you guys a version of the build that you can start to lean towards that is pure minions once you're later into the end game. You do want to set that build up a little bit differently, but for leveling, it is extremely straightforward. You just put the skills on, put on some minions, and everything will just get decimated. Before we get into the build, I want to show you guys something really cool, which is the Mobalytics desktop app. I'd highly recommend downloading it. On here, you can see all sorts of different builds. They have a ton of different filters that you can go through. My favorite feature is the build tier list. A lot of the times, I actually find builds that I wasn't previously aware of just by looking at the tier list, and this gets updated constantly. So for example, I didn't even know that you could do it like a Thorns Barb or like a Heartseeker Rogue. That's pretty interesting, using a basic skill as a build. There's just a lot of different things you can look out for here. You can also even post your own build and find it within the community build section. This is a great way to find off meta builds, or if you just wanted to try something else out, for example, maybe you wanted to try something that is like off meta, you want a PvP build, which aren't on YouTube very often, or you want to try a very specific leveling build, there's all sorts of filters over here on Mobalytics. You can also mess around with their build planner and, like I said, post your own build. The biggest reason that you guys would probably want to download it though is that you can use an in-game overlay, and you can even pull up my build, which this is where my build will be linked. And with this in-game overlay, you can actually look at all of the stuff regarding to the build, all the legendaries, the Book of the Dead, the skill tree, and this is very good for leveling. And I might even just keep it on for this video because you can look at the leveling path and the skill tree. So while you're leveling up, you don't actually have to have like the YouTube video pulled up or a separate website, but you should have my Twitch stream pulled up at twitch.tv/Nick2. Okay, anyways, you can have this pulled up and you can just look through all of the skill points and go along with it. So right when you load in, you can just be like, okay, boom, Reap, Blood Surge, blah, 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 blah. Really helpful there. Highly recommend downloading it. It's absolutely free. There's also a lot of other very helpful information on here, like timers for bosses, Legion events, etc. So highly recommend checking that out. As always, if you find the video helpful, please make sure to drop a like. I'm going to be making a ton of builds just like this for Season 4, so if you're interested in this sort of content, or you find the video helpful, please make sure to subscribe. I'm going to be streaming a ton over on Twitch, so if you have any questions, feel free to just stop by over on Twitch. So getting into it, the point of this build is to absolutely juice the crap out of your minions and have them just dominate everything, which they will do pretty much by default because of how powerful they are, and I'll get into a lot of ways to increase their damage. However, previously, Blood Surge was the single best leveling build in the entire game, and you can just add this onto the minion build completely for free, pretty much, just a few skill points, and you will basically double your damage output while leveling. This is going to significantly increase how fast you're going to level. Later into the game, you do want to transition into pure minions. I promise you though, this is not intimidating at all. This is not making the build more difficult, and it does not detract away from your minions at all. You're still going to build as much as you can into the minions while just having Blood Surge for literally double the damage output while leveling. Like I said, previously it was the best leveling build in the game. So getting that for free on top of minions just annihilating everything, it's like the perfect combo. Blood Surge just hits like the whole screen. It does crazy AoE damage, and then the minions will just nuke bosses. When it comes to what skills you want, Reap is by far your best basic skill. The reason for this is because it generates essence per enemy hit. You don't really need essence too much. The biggest benefit of Reap is you get 15% damage reduction, and you get attack speed if an enemy dies within 2 seconds of you pressing Reap. This attack speed and every other stat is actually going to convert not only to you, but any stat that you get, your minions also get. So this is 30% attack speed for your minions and 15% damage reduction, which is really good. Then we're going to go into Blood Surge, Enhanced Blood Surge, and Supernatural. We're not going to go around overpowers and stuff. It's better to just build into raw damage for the Blood Surge at this point. We're going to buff our Blood Surge up. At this point, it's up to you whether or not you want to buff the warriors real quickly or just finish buffing Blood Surge. I'm just going to finish buffing Blood Surge because right out the gate it's just really strong, and then we just want to buff our warriors. We want to go into Iron Maiden and then Enhanced Iron Maiden. This is going to give you a crazy amount of essence, and when you're leveling in Helltide, there's a lot of enemies. You just plop down an Iron Maiden, boom, you just get a ton of essence. You can then cast your Blood Surges, and your minions can kill stuff, and you'll just get a ton of essence back. And then Abhorrent Iron Maiden will just heal you anytime you kill an enemy afflicted with it, so that is a lot of survivability for us. At this point, we now have access to our skeletal mages, so we are going to fully buff them, and that's just going to drastically increase our damage. The majority of our damage while leveling up and later into the game is going to be skeletal mages. Now that we buffed our minions, we want to go into corpse tendrils and then grab vulnerable. This is going to help because it's going to suck all the enemies in, consolidate them so that we can pop our blood surge, and vulnerable is just a lot of extra damage for us, right? Then we just want to drop 2 points into amplified damage so we can get further down into the tree, and this is where we can buff our minions like crazy. We want to get inspiring later. This is actually crit chance for us and our minions. It gives us a total of 30% crit chance. I'm not currently on season 4, so the tooltip is not updated for this, but this is a crazy 30% crit chance is a lot of extra damage for us. Then we're going to get Hellbent Commander. 45% increased damage for our minions when we're close to them is absolutely insane. And then next to that, around level 25 is where you're going to be able to get access to your Golem. Your Golem later into the game we're not going to be playing with unless you want to go into a full Golem build, but while leveling it will do a pretty good amount of damage, so it's nice to have, and buffing it is pretty low cost. Quickly we can finish off amplified damage, and then we can go into Callan's Edict, which is just going to increase our minions' attack speed by about 30% because we're going to have over 7 minions, which is just straight up a lot of extra damage. To finish everything off, we just want to get a lot of extra passives, so we go 3 into Death's Embrace for some damage and damage reduction, which is also going to apply to our minions, 3 into movement speed because it's nice to move pretty quickly, and then it is up to you if you find this necessary, but if you see the minions dying a lot, it would be really good to grab 3 into Death's Defense, and then 3 into Bonded in Essence so that they get healing and a lot of resistances. But if you aren't having a problem with your minion survivability, you could instead just spec this into your own survivability a little bit earlier on in the form of spiked armor, getting you just 15% extra damage early on, which will also convert into your minions, and it'll give them some thorns, which is pretty good. Because we are still playing with Blood Surge, it's nice to just get a little bit of extra Blood Surge damage, so we can go into Coalesce Blood for just 18% increased extra damage for our Blood Surge, and we can slam some points into Unliving Energy and Imperfectly Balanced, and you just have like 1 point left over. You can put into like Necrotic Carapace or just something random, reduce the cooldown of Corpse Tendrils, whatever, it's really up to you. There's a bit of variation, but overall the build is pretty simple. When it comes to the Book of the Dead, this is going to change a little bit based on what level you are. When you start out, you want to go with 1 additional Skirmisher Warrior, but later on, you want the Reapers with the cooldown reduction, which is actually 3 seconds. The only cooldown you have with this build currently is going to be Corpse Tendrils, so this is just going to drastically increase how often you can press your Corpse Tendrils, which is really good. And later into the game, this is just insane for that as well, and even reducing cooldowns on ultimates if you plan to use an ultimate. When it comes to your mages, which is going to be the main source of your damage, early on you want to go into the Shadow Mages. This is actually every 3rd attack now, but I would highly recommend, once you have access to it, going into Cold Mages and going into Vulnerable. I tried all of the mages, and while leveling, having permanent access to Vulnerable is just insanely good, because otherwise you're relying on Corpse Tendrils, and other classes early into the game don't have easy access to Vulnerable. So if you're playing with friends, your mages permanently making everything vulnerable is just a 20% damage increase for your entire group. So it is extremely high value, and the every 3rd attack with the Shadow Mages will end up being better, but while leveling, the Vulnerable is just straight up better. When it comes to the Golem, you have a couple of different options. A lot of people go for Blood Golem Absorbs. It's now 30% damage. They buffed a lot of the Book of the Dead stuff. So currently in Season 3, the tooltips don't reflect that. But this is 30% damage reduction basically. Great for your survivability and your other minions if you need it. Or you can go into just increasing their damage straight up. I think for raw damage, the best thing to do is the Iron Golem with attacks create a shockwave, and this is every 2nd attack actually. Later into the game, you're not going to use a Golem anymore if you play pure mages, and you're going to use the Golem Sacrifice. But early on, the Golem does pretty good damage, so you may as well just pick it up and use it. If you don't want to use the Golem, though, you could just take it off and put it into an ultimate, or go into like Blood Mist or something. When it comes to which aspects you want to get and other stuff relating to gear, the best legendaries that you can get is Aspect of Frenzied Dead, just going to increase the attack speed of all of your minions. Aspect of Reanimation will increase your minions' damage straight up. And then Grasping Veins will give you crit chance and crit damage, which will apply to your minions anytime that you just use your Corpse Tendrils. And your Corpse Tendrils will be a pretty low cooldown if you're using the Reapers with the cooldown reduction spec. That's the best stuff you can get for your minions early on for a pretty significant damage increase. And then for Blood Surge, you can just get the Bloodbath aspect. It's probably worth going and getting. It will nearly double the damage of your Blood Surge, but you don't want to go out of your way to get like 5 aspects, right? So in terms of priority, I would go for Reanimation, and then Frenzied Dead, and then Grasping Veins probably. There's not like a set in stone best way or best order to go for things. When it comes to your gear, I would be on the lookout for tempering manuals that are going to give you additive damage. Additive damage early on is really, really good because we're not going to have much of it. So getting like 50% damage when you don't have anything else is straight up 50% damage. There's actually some skeletal mage ones that are very, very good. If you can get like offensive skeletal mages damage, this is a crazy amount of extra damage for us. And you can also get it for Golem as well, etc. But for mages is going to be your best bet. You can also get mages have a chance to cast projectiles twice. Currently it says unknown, but is actually for the mages. That is very good. When it comes to what else you want on your gear, primarily just try to look out for crit chance and attack speed. That is very good for buffing also you and your minions. Alternative to that, you can get ranks to Skeletal Mage Mastery to just increase their damage, and ranks to Warrior and ranks to Golem on a lot of different pieces of gear. It's unclear right now which pieces that will be because they said that they are changing that, but getting ranks to this literally will just increase their damage multiplicatively. 3 ranks is 45% increased mage damage. That is like absolutely insane. Intelligence is pretty good. Life per hit is going to give you like pretty much make you invincible. That is extremely powerful. But honestly, just look out for like crit chance and attack speed. That's going to be your overall best bet. I'd also recommend trying to look out for gear that has resistances on it, because if you want to go into World Tier 3 or 4 early on, having resistances is extremely important. Juggernaut aspect is a fantastic aspect to get early on as well, because it's going to basically armor cap you, so you don't have to worry about armor anymore. And then outside of that, you can get like damage reduction for your minions, wind strikers for a little bit of movement speed, and aspect of occult. I forgot to mention this one, but it increases how many warriors and mages you can get by 2. This is one of the things that I'd go out of my way to get early on as well. That's pretty much it for the leveling Blood Surge version of the build. Once you get later into the game, around World Tier 4, level like 50 to 60 or so, is when I would recommend transitioning into a pure minion shadow damage build. The reason that I would not recommend going into this early is because it requires some legendaries and some synergies, and I'd recommend you have an ancestral two-handed weapon prior to swapping to this version of the build. This version is going to be using skeletal mages. A lot of you guys have probably seen the golems hitting bosses for like billions of damage. That is really, really good for bossing, but for general like map clearing, it's a little slow because you're reliant only on the golem, whereas with the mages, they just do really good damage all the time, and it's very consistent. You can still kill bosses extremely quickly with it. I don't think you'll hit for billions of damage, but I think you can do like hundreds of millions of DPS with the perfect build. The reason that you want to go into shadow damage is because you can make your mages do shadow damage, and you get the aspect Blighted, which is unbelievably busted. If you put on a two-hander, it gives you 240% increased damage. We just want to make sure to have this key passive up all the time by just dealing shadow damage. So if we have our mages with high enough attack speed, they will be proccing shadow damage. We're going to be using Blight, which it gives us shadow damage as well. And also we get the 20% increased damage to enemies afflicted with Blight. And we are using Corpse Explosion with Blighted Corpse Explosion, making it a darkness skill. And anytime that we just use our Blood Mist, we're going to be popping a bunch of corpses, and it's going to give us crit chance. So we're going to be reducing the cooldown on our Blood Mist so we can be in there a lot of the time. And it's going to pop all these Corpse Explosions so that we have access to Blighted all of the time. There's also some other synergies when it comes to shadow damage, such as being able to get Reaper's Pursuit, Gloom, and Terror. And you can also gain access to this one legendary, which is 50% increased shadow damage to enemies afflicted by any curse, which is why we're using Decrepify. I forgot to change this, but this is actually going to be Decrepify, which is going to reduce the amount of damage that enemies do to us, and it gives us cooldown reduction, which is incredibly powerful. Next to that, I'm using Reap just for some damage reduction. Corpse Tendrils is very good, and we're still using the Reapers for the cooldown reduction. End up sacrificing the Golem just for a little bit of extra damage. I'll have a full video on this probably like day 2 of the patch coming out, so feel free to just check that out. But I just wanted to go over with you guys what this build actually is and what you need to be able to swap to it. It will just be here on Mobalytics within the same link as the Blood Surge one, so feel free to just check that out. I just wanted to give you an idea of what it's going to be. Basically, you just juice up the shadow mages as much as humanly possible, ditch the golem, go for some shadow stuff, get Blighted, get Aspect of the Damned. Grasping Veins is great for crit chance and crit damage, Frenzy Dead for attack speed, Reanimation for just more minion damage, Juggernaut for armor cap, Hardened Bones for damage reduction, and Explosive Mist for the Corpse Explosion thing that I explained, and Occult Dominion for more warriors and more minions. It's a pretty straightforward build, to be honest with you. There's a lot of different little things that you can change about it, but like right out the gate, you could probably level with this as well, but it's not going to be better than Blood Surge, because Blood Surge starts to fall off later when you need like just more raw damage, but leveling Blood Surge is insanely good. But once you start getting like temper manuals, you get Blighted affix, you get enough cooldown reduction to have corpse tendrils up more often and get the vulnerable that way. All these different little things, this build starts to come together way more, and it will be your ultimate build to get all the way to level 100 with. Again, I'll have a video on it. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, please make sure to drop a like, subscribe for videos similar to this one. Feel free to check me out on Twitch if you are interested. Would love to see you guys around. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the video. Again, build link will be in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.